Crazy stuff. I did not see this one coming, but the Toronto Raptors have shocked everybody, and they have traded for Brandon Ingram. Yes, this deal is official via Shams. The Toronto Raptors have acquired Brandon Ingram from the New Orleans Pelicans for Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, one first-round pick, which ends up being the Pacers 2026 first, and one second-round pick. So if you're keeping score at home, the official return on the Pascal Siakam trade is Brandon Ingram, Jacoby Walter, Abaji. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. And what is important to note is that first round pick that they give up, because at first I was concerned what it was going to be. It ends up being the pick they acquired in that Siakam deal. So it is the 2026 Pacers first, top four protected. The Pacers are a good team. I don't expect them to fall off drastically. So it's going to be a later pick. It's not going to end up being a lottery pick. In all likelihood, I don't think it's going to end up being a lottery pick. So that's the deal. The Toronto Raptors get Brandon Ingram. And now it's like, wow. I really thought this team was dead set on rebuilding. I thought they had finally chosen their path. They were going to take the slow, patient approach. But what do I know? This team seemingly pivoted. They go after a win-now guy. They go after a former All-Star. And Masai Ujiri does get Brandon Ingram, a 27-year-old former All-Star, at a buy low move, which from that perspective, Masai made a good deal. It's tough to get star talent, especially being the Toronto Raptors. A lot of guys don't want to come here. So Masai knows when the opportunity presents itself, kind of like it did for Kawhi, not comparing this to Kawhi, but you get what I mean. You sometimes have to take a chance on it. And Masai Ujiri took that chance. Now look, I always thought if a trade like this went down, RJ Barrett would have to be included. But he's not included. So the Raptors are going to be a tax team. Now, it's not the end of the world, but usually when you're a tax team, you are close to being a contender. This team is not close to being a contender, so that's a really restrictive area to be. So that leads me to think the Raptors might have another move down the line to get under the tax. They don't have to operate on that now. I believe they have until the end of next season. But they're probably going to end up making another move to get under that tax. So is that going to be Emmanuel Quickley or RJ Barrett? We're not going to entertain that conversation in this video. But I don't like the fact that the Raptors are a tax team. The other thing I'm not a fan of is, are the Raptors really boycotting this tank? Are they really boycotting trying to get a top pick in the upcoming draft? Because this draft is really, really good, man. Like, I still wanted the Raptors to hold out and try to get a top pick in the draft. And I still hope that's their intention. It's going to be tough because I don't think they're going to sit out Ingram. We are going to see Brandon Ingram at some point, probably in March. He is still injured, which is important to note. There's no definitive timeline for his return. He is week to week. So we will see Ingram. The Raptors are definitely not going to shut him down for the season. They're going to want to see how he looks with this team. But maybe they get creative. Maybe they strategically, ethically tank. And best case scenario, I'm being very, very optimistic here. The Raptors have Ingram. They still play for the draft, the lottery, and they end up with a top 5 pick. Then you're really cooking. You're in a really good position because you didn't sacrifice another draft for a win-now guy. So that's what I hope happens. Another thing is Brandon Ingram's health. Can he stay healthy? That is a big if, because this is a guy who is, considered not durable. He's not played in more than 65 games going back to his rookie season. So hopefully he can debunk that narrative and he can stay healthy and you really get the best of Ingram. He's 27 years old, so in theory, he's entering his prime now. You should get the best of Brandon Ingram. And then the last bit here is he's an unrestricted free agent. I'm not concerned about Ingram stiffing the Raptors and leaving. I think he is going to resign, but can the Raptors get him at a reasonable price? That's going to be the question. So those are all things to consider and all big questions. And, the other thing, too, is fit. Can Brandon Ingram fit alongside Scotty Barnes truly flourish? And how's this Raptors team going to look now when you have IQ, RJ, Ingram, Barnes, and Pirtle? It could be clunky because Barrett, Barnes, and Ingram, They like to operate in that mid-range, and they kind of similarly attack the same areas of the court. So that's going to be something interesting to see. But now you look at the pros, it's like, yeah, the Raptors, they have a guy who's a former All-Star. I don't think he's a superstar, but he's a guy who makes this team better. Let's call it for what it is. He gives the Raptors an offensive boost. He's a legitimate shot creator, something that this team doesn't have on this roster, something that this team hasn't had since Kawhi Leonard. Let's be real, like a legitimate shot creator, somebody who can get his. And now I realistically see him being as that closer. And the more I think about it, I think he and Barnes can work well because Barnes can now be himself. He does not have to play out of his game. He doesn't have to be that guy who you and I were hoping he'd become, of like that score first guy. He can play his game. He can be that hub. And Ingram I see being that go-to option, that guy who closes games for the Raptors. So I'm not concerned about their fit. I question the fit with them two and RJ Barrett. I'm not sold on that just yet. I got to see it. It'll be interesting to see how that works itself out. But I think B.I. and Scotty can be very, very dynamite together. So at the end of the day, Brandon Ingram, he gives this team a legitimate, score first option. He's probably penciled in, I would say, as the 1A. I really think in the pecking order, this is going to be like Barnes being that, sidekick type of guy next to a guy in Ingram who we know he's got that capability of cooking. He can go off. He's got that potential when he's at the peak of his powers. And I think that's okay. I think if that works, why not? So we'll see how that works. We'll see how the Raptors approach the rest of the season. But certainly surprised by how this went down. The Raptors able to flip an expiring contract in Bruce Brown and Olynyk, and they get back Ingram. Their front court depth is very thin. That's another issue. They're going to have to address that. Maybe they do something else. Right now, they're thin there. You got rid of Olynyk. You basically have Pirtle and Orlando Robinson, who's on a second 10-day contract. We'll see what they do with him. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think my main takeaway from this is that the Raptors, Masai Ujiri, he's not interested, and he never was interested in the slow, methodical, old school rebuild. I believe this move signals that he really believes in Scotty Barnes and maximizing Scotty being good already, that he wants to try to compete sooner rather than later. He wants to try to get back to that position that this franchise once was in. So whether or not you agree with that, I think that's what Masai's thinking is with this move. Like I said before, I selfishly want this team to keep their lotto chances alive and get a top pick. Because if they squander that and are a playing team, then I really don't know what this team is thinking at that point. And then the other part of it, like I said before, they're going to have to make a trade at some point to get under the tax, because I don't think it's a good idea to be a tax team with this group when this team is clearly not a championship contender. I think the Raptors just saw this as an opportunity to get a star player. They, going back to Granger's report, he ended up being right. They wanted a significant piece alongside Barnes. They have that. And I think right now, B.I. and Scotty are their guys, and there could still be a lot of change around them. That's how I see this thing. So we'll see what happens. But let me know your thoughts, guys. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. That is it for me. It's Lucas signing off. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you all again in the next one.